Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Maaike, welcome to my hobby channel, Floating in Dreams, where I like to talk about all things fashion and makeup. And in today's makeup video, yes, eyeshadow palette extravaganza is still continuing. And of course, I could not do a complete month dedicated to eyeshadow palettes and not talk about my favorite topic, which is cool tone neutral eyeshadow palettes. So that's what today's video is going to be all about. I'm going to be sharing with you my top 10 favorite cool tone neutral eyeshadow palettes that are still on the market today, because that was something that I did want to include here. If I were to show you my actual 10 favorite cool tone palettes, it could very well be that I would be including quite a few of them that you can no longer buy, and that to me wasn't the best idea. So I will be, at some point later this year, I will be going over my entire cool tone neutral eyeshadow palette collection and sort of rank all of them from best to worst. But in today's video, we're going to keep it nice and cute and curated, and we're just going to talk about my 10 favorite cool tone neutral eyeshadow palettes that you can still buy. Now, before we get to the eyeshadow palettes, I do want to point out that I will be linking any content I've already created featuring these palettes in the description box down below. Some of these I've mentioned in previous either 10 palette review videos, or I've talked about them in my cool tone videos that I've been doing every single year. So make sure to link those down below. And if there's any blog posts where I have a dedicated review to a single palette with swatches and looks, I will also make sure to link those in the description box so that you can have a look at those in case you are wondering what these things might look like on my face and how they perform, and what my, not just my thoughts are, but that you can actually see how it performs. I've got a split here of some larger palettes, some more luxury palettes, some cheaper, more affordable palettes, and also really small, very curated color stories as well. So there's a ginormous mixed bag here of different types of palette, but what they all have in common is that they are cool toned neutral eyeshadow palettes. And as I already mentioned, I love a good cool tone neutral. That's my sort of comfort zone, you could say, when it comes to eyeshadow palettes. I feel that if I do my makeup using a cool tone neutral, that it's always going to be pretty on me. I know that a lot of people say that cool tones are very unflattering because they can look very ashy and gray, but I hope that by doing this video I can show you some options that even if you have a much deeper skin tone than myself, or if you are more warm toned leaning, that you can still get away with cool tones. It's just that you need to look for other things, and that you're gonna have to be a little bit more smart about how you pair your cool tones with other shades to really make it wearable for you. So I hope I can give you some insights on that. For me, that really goes when I wanna wear warm tones. I always have to really sort of look at how I pair the shades and where I put them on my lid to not make it look dead and ashy on myself. So what a lot of people say happens to them when they are wearing cool tones, if they have a warm undertone or they have much deeper skin tones, that's actually the struggle that I have when I go for a warm tone palette. So yeah, I just thought we could chat about my 10 favorites here, and hopefully that can give you some insights that even if you are a lover of all things warm toned, you can get away with. And if you are a fair skinned gal or guy like me, that you can also get some recommendations here of what's currently on the market. So let's just get cracking. So I thought we could get the small things out of the way first, and then we're going to build up to the larger palettes as we go along. And that also means that we're going to start with the more affordable options first, because apparently the more affordable things are also the things that are quite small and curated. And one of my recent favorites of the past year has been the range that Catrice has been doing, the 5 in a box range, and they do a really pretty cool toned palette as part of it. This particular palette and the other 3 that launched initially have now been released in the US, so you can buy this, which is lovely. And this is what it looks like. So this is the modern smoky look. It's number 040, and what you get in here is like a taupe transition shade, a creamy shade to blend things out. You get an inner corner / more vibrant highlight. Like, it's a champagne, but it skews quite gray toned. It's sort of like a dirty champagne. Reminds me a lot of a shade that you can actually find in the Melt Gunmetal stack, which I think, what's it called again? I always forget to name. But in the gunmetal stack, yeah, this really very nice light shade that was still bright and vibrant, but it had this dirty gray tone quality to it, which made me fall in love with it. And I feel that this shade is very similar. You get a very nice like steel tone blue. So this makes it really perfect for a smoky eye because it is a bit more gray tone leaning. And then you get a blue tone charcoal gray that goes really nice with the blue, but also with the taupiness of the other shades that you've got going on here. So this is a very nicely curated, cool tone color story that I think is very neutral, that you can do a smoky look with if you'd like to, but I think that if you just go for this in the crease and that all over the lid, you've got a perfect, very basic look that you can just wear every single day. These look like Natasha Denona mini palettes. They're not dupes for shade ranges that Natasha Denona does, and what these 5 in a box palettes all have in common is that you get 2 shades that are shimmers and 3 shades that are matte, and the shades that you get that are shimmers and mattes are identical in each palette. So it's always a more like highlighter kind of shade that's going to be a shimmer, and then a mid-tone or a more vibrant shimmer that you can very easily use all over the lid or on the lower lash line, and then you just get some blend shades and something to deepen it up in the mattes. So these are all laid out in a similar way, whereas the Natasha Denona palettes all have different ratios of mattes and shimmers usually, but these always have the same sort of layout for each one. It comes in a bunch of different shades, so if you do really like warm tones, then definitely also check out some of the warm toned options this line has, because those are lovely too, because the quality of this is amazing. Over here in the Netherlands, these retail for $3.99. I believe in the US these retail for $6, and this is much better quality than an e.l.f. or a Wet n Wild, that's for sure. So that's why I highly recommend the Catrice 5 in a box palette in modern smoky look if you're looking for a very nicely curated, cool tone color story that doesn't break the bank. Now, if you're willing to spend a little bit more, then I think your next steps, your best bets when it comes to more affordable eyeshadow would be Juvia's Place. And the reason why I want to mention this is because also this palette, like this line of palette, Juvia's Place, puts it on sale a lot. So I would definitely wait around for them to do a sale, because when these go on sale, they retail for only $7, and then I think you've got a really, really good deal. I'm holding up, of course, the taupe palette, because really, I love taupes. If you're unfamiliar with my channel, then a good taupe is really where it's at for me. And also, if you are super fair, this is going to work lovely on you, because very often what I find, and that's something that we'll get to also when we get to some of the larger palettes, sometimes brands thinks that cool tones can only be grays, but I love taupes, and especially cool tone taupes, and we got plenty of those in here. However, these 2 shades are a little bit more warm toned leaning, so that's why I think this can also work quite well for people who have a warmer undertone. Though if you're super warm toned and like things like oranges are very flattering on you, then this may be a little too ashy. I've got some other options that I think you might like, but for me it's really these 4 shades where it's at. And I don't know if you can see that, but some of these shades have almost a hint of green to them. And I love a green tone taupe. I just really, really like those. And this is also very fair tone, like fair skin friendly. So it's very light. It sheers out really nicely. The shimmers build up really well. Nothing in here is too deep that you can't get away with it. So especially if you are very similar to my undertone and my coloring, then I think you can really like this palette. But if you want something that's around a similar price point, but you want to get a little bit more out of your taupe palette, then I think Colourpop's That's Taupe is another one that if you buy it on sale, you can get these for like $9. Full price, I think this is $14, so it's still not too majorly expensive, but it is getting a little bit out there. I would definitely wait around for like a 30% off sale and get this for $9. I think that's what I did. And this gives you a little bit more versatility. So the taupes palette from Juvia's is very sort of monochromatic taupe, whereas this, you do get a bit more depth. You again get that like hint of green in there, which I really appreciate. The shimmers in here are lovely. You get a good range of matte, like mid-tones and lighter shades to really round out a look. And I feel that this is one of the very few more monochromatic Colourpop palettes that have come out that isn't superfluous. Like in a lot of these monochromatic palettes, even if they're only 9 pans, I felt there were a lot of shades that were like duplicates or that you didn't really need. Whereas here, you get something that's a bit more warm toned, something that's a little bit more cool toned leaning for that transition shade. And then you get some really good shades to blend those things out with as well. So for me, this was just a really good color story again. And this is really nice if you want to make things a little bit more smoky, or perhaps because you have a more, like if you just have a deeper skin tone than I do, then this will work a lot better on you than the Juvia's Place will. But this is definitely a really nice, cool toned, taupey color story that I really liked. But what if taupe is not really your thing? I can imagine that taupe is not everyone's cup of tea. If you like to go a little bit more silvery leaning, then I can highly recommend the Knoblach Cutie palette in the shade Platinum. This is number 3 in the line. They now do 7 of these. And this is also a cool tone color story that I would like to recommend if you are someone with an olive or more warm toned skin tone. Because you get these like reddish bronzy shades, it's really going to nicely work with these cool tones for you to really take that look to the next level. On me, it can skew a little weirdly. I definitely have to be very careful where I put certain shades for this to be flattering. But these 2 shades in the middle are just, they're a great lifesaver. And I think that this is the kind of palette that a lot of people are going to like, that are a little bit deeper, that have more warmer undertones than I do, because you also get this like bronzy gold shade. It's like that dirty gold with almost like a hint of green to it. It goes really well actually with these cool tones. So for me, this quad is lovely. It's these 2 shades that skew it a little bit warm toned leaning for me. However, if you were to pull the taupe into these 2 shades, it's not gonna look weird. So I think that if you look for something that is cool toned, but you are afraid that it's going to look very ashy and sickly on you, then definitely look into the Knoblach Cutie palette, because I feel that this is the cool tone palette for people with warm undertones who do not tend to like cool tones that much on themselves. What I really like about this is that the 2 mattes you get in here are lovely, and they are perfect for like what I would want to do with a matte. You get a really nice deep cool tone brown instead of a black, which is what a lot of cool tone palettes tend to do, is they put in blacks rather than cool tone browns. And I feel that cool tone browns, that's what we need to see more of. So I really appreciate that the palette has that, because again, if you pull that brown into these 2, it's going to look really lovely. You can stick to the warm tones and make like a gold smoky eye if you'd like to, and then you've got this gorgeous shimmer and a gorgeous taupe to really pull it more cool toned. So the Cutie palette is one that, even though it only has 6 pans, it's also really versatile, and that's why I think it can work for many different people. It is quite deep though, so if you are super fair and you don't like very smoky looks, then this may be one you want to skip. But this is definitely a lovely, lovely palette. If you are more of a matte lover, I also have you covered there, because the Dose of Colors Pretty Cool palette is one that is all matte. It only comes with 5 shades, and it's 5 different renditions of taupe. So I'm gonna love this. Again, you get something that's a little bit more green toned leaning, something that's like a cooler tone brown, and then you just get a little bit of like a warm toned leaning taupe and a cooler toned leaning taupe, and you get something that's a bit more beige leaning. But basically, if you're looking for a full taupe spectrum, but you don't want it to be too overpowering and have too many options, then this will work really lovely. Again, it goes light enough and deep enough to make it work on many different people. And if you just have something like a Stila Glitter and Glow or another like single shadow on hand that can give you a little bit of sparkle, then this is a very good everyday, very curated palette that you can chuck into a makeup bag, and you will always have a very foolproof makeup look, in my opinion. These are very soft though, so I'm not sure if you should chuck these into a makeup bag. I've personally never done that because these are quite soft, so I am afraid that these could shatter quite quickly. But that's why I do find these some of the easiest mattes to work with. They are super blendable, super easy to build up, and give you a really nice intense color story. But I do feel that with just 5 pans and it's all being matte, it is limiting in what it can give you. So I would definitely recommend pulling in a shimmer or a glitter to just add a little bit more oomph, because I love a good shimmer. But this still gets to go into my top 10 because it is so nicely curated and just perfect for every day, and I can see that this can work for a lot of people. Now we're going to move on to the second half of the palettes that I have for you, and here we get some like bigger palettes, not necessarily more pans per se, but I definitely also here get into the slightly more expensive palettes. So the Dose of Colors one is quite expensive for how many shades you get. I think these are like $35 for like 5 shades, which is a bit ridiculous. But the other ones were all a little bit more affordable. So this is where we're sort of starting to bridge the gap between the affordable stuff, or more affordable stuff I should say, and the more high-end stuff, that's for sure. And another palette that's going to bridge that gap for us is the Venus Immortalis by Lime Crime. Now you can still buy this off of their official website, so that may be good to know. This is an 8-pan color story, and where the Knoblach Cutie palette is perfect for people who like warmer tones, this is not gonna fly if you like warm tones, because this is very, very gray leaning, and that is not everyone's cup of tea. But if you are very, very cool toned, this is going to look lovely on you. I really like this shade here called Moth. It's like my perfect sort of like creasy, transition-y kind of shade. Then you have Cameo, which is really lovely for blending things out. And even though these two shades are quite deep, I feel that these two are capable of toning these shades down enough that I can make it work on my fair skin tone and even use these two in the crease, for instance. One thing I appreciate in this palette is that you get a burgundy plum leaning shade. So that's again going to add a little bit more interest to it than it just being grays with a black. You know what I mean? Again, in here you get a silvery shimmer and you get a really lovely taupey shimmer, especially Echo that's like the standout shade in the palette. And then you get a black, which isn't the best black on the planet, but it works okay if you want to do like a quick liner look. It's okay. So yeah, that would be the Lime Crime Venus Immortalis. This is a little bit harder to find, I have to say, but if you are really looking for a cool tone palette that's just a straight up cool tone, then this I think will give you a lot of variety, even though you only get 8 pans. And then we get to some more indie brands as well, because one palette that I tried recently, I think in recent months, is the Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse, and this is the brand from Manny MUA, and this is a lovely cool tone color story, but it's got warmth. It's again like the Knoblach Cutie, not overly warm where the shades don't mix and match. I feel that again this is a very versatile cool tone palette, because even some of these warm tones in this corner, like if you were to cover this up, you can see how cool toned it is, but then this makes it a bit more warm toned, and you've got a gold and you've got a bronze and you've got like a reddish tone brown and like an orange tone brown, so you can do a full-on warm toned look with this if you were to, you know, if you were so inclined, but you don't have to. And then you get this lovely row of like navy blue grayish shimmers and mattes that if you want to go super smoky you can. However, you can stick to some of these lighter shades over here and pull in some of those shimmers and call it a day, and you've got a perfect neutral look. Again, a really lovely silver, a lovely taupey shade, and also this flare shade was really pretty too. So it's got a lot of versatility actually, and again a palette that I think a lot of people might enjoy, whether you are fair toned, whether you have a darker skin tone, whether you are cool toned or warm toned. This can work for so many different people because you just get so many options. And I, like, one of my favorite things to do on myself, like in terms of smoky eyes, is a navy toned smoky eye. So I could not recommend this, because this just gives me everything I like to do in terms of eyeshadow. Another indie palette then, and this is one that released this year, and it's the Mel Mary Jane palette. Now, I know that this is an unpopular opinion because a lot of people didn't like this palette, but hear me out. Yes, it's a messy palette to use. let's just get that out of the way. But what I like about this palette is that it's cool toned, but it's brown toned cool tones rather than ashy gray tones, which is again why I think a lot of people can get away with this. I love how we get some green tones over on this end. This is really the only like taupey gray shades you get. And then here it's a little bit more brown toned. Now these two shimmers on the end were the shades that a lot of people had issues with, because these take a lot of building up for them to go on opaque if you want to use them by themselves. However, it's also quite a dark palette, to be quite fair. Like, this is the only transition shade I can really use. It works really well on me as a transition shade, I have to say. But because these like other shimmers are all quite dark, what I've been doing to make this palette work for my fair skin tone is that I've been using those two shimmers on the end as toppers, and I really feel that that's how those other shimmers really come to life a lot more. So for me and what I like in a palette, this works really, really well, actually. But I can see that if you were to try and use this shade, for instance, all over the lid, it's not gonna work. That's not something, but that's just something I don't do. A shade this light I only use in an inner corner, like as a highlighter. I don't really use it anywhere else. And then as a topper shade. So you can use this to create like halo eye kind of vibes, or just to brighten up some of those other shades. I really feel that those two shades on the end are the transformer shades of the palette that can really like give you lots of versatility out of the palette. So that's why I do really appreciate the Mary Jane. So I understand the critiques that a lot of people have been having, but I feel that you should not discredit this palette at all. Yes, the shimmers are messy, but if you tap off your brush or you use your fingers, it's a lovely palette, and it's not too cool toned. So again, especially if you have a darker skin tone, this is going to be a perfect cool tone neutral color story for you, because it's never ashy. It looks really, really stunning and deep and saturated. So I think that if you have a much deeper skin tone than I do, you can get even more out of this palette than I personally can. We get to the more luxury offerings, because I also, of course, have to mention the Natasha Nona Glam palette, because this, if you know anything about me and the content I make, then you might know that I love the Urban Decay Naked 2. That's one of my all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes till this day. And this is a perfect replacement for it, because that was discontinued, and I was actually able to create the exact same look with the Naked 2 and the Glam. So they have a lot of overlapping shades. And the Natasha Nona Glam palette is just a really, really good one. It's got more shimmers than mattes though, so you need to bear that in mind before buying this. If you love mattes, this is not going to be your palette. Only 5 mattes and 10 shimmers. Again, like the Manny MUA Lunar Beauty palette, you do get some warmth over in this side of the palette. So if I cover this up, then you can really see how cool toned it actually is. But if you take this, you know, do you just see what I mean here? So you can very easily sort of make this a bit more warm tone if you want to, because you do get like a warm tone brown and some like warm tone transition shades, and you get a gold in here as well. Depending on what you put the rose gold in the corner here with, it can go a little bit more cool toned, or it can go a bit more warm toned. Again, no black in this palette, which I appreciate. The darkest it goes is this like really cool tone, charcoaly, grayish brown shade. It sort of skews brown if you put it with browns, and if you put it with grays, it's going to look gray. It's that kind of like in-between kind of shade, which I like. For my fair skin, I can do a perfect super neutral look, because it goes light enough for me, but it also has enough depth to make it a very versatile palette. If I were to recommend just one, get this, because I feel that this is the palette that can do it all, but it doesn't have like the fun pops of more green tones or blue tones that some of these other palettes have that I have just mentioned. However, if you're looking for something that's purely smack down in the middle, neutral toned, and you don't want any color or anything too much to faff around with, and you want something that's foolproof, that's always going to look nice for every single day, and you can glam it up and get loads of different looks out of it, then I think the Natasha Nona Glam palette is going to be the one to buy. And then finally, last but not least, the most expensive option I wanted to share with you, and this is the McGrath Mothership 1 Subliminal palette. Let me unwrap this. So this is what the outer box looks like, and then if you open it up, you get 10 really stunning cool tone shades. And this was my first sort of larger pick from the original lineup. I was sort of like looking at these palettes, and a lot of people were recommending the Bronze Seduction and like these more warm toned leaning color stories. But I looked at those and I was like, I don't think I'd get the use out of those. In here, you get taupes. Oops, I'm sticking my finger in. You get some taupes, you get some lilac-y shades, which are really interesting. You do get a black, which is, again, it's not the most intense black on the planet, but on me and my fair skin, I don't love a very intense black. Actually, when you shear this out, it pulls a bit more charcoal, and that's what's perfect for me. This shimmer I probably could have done without, and she insists on putting yellow tone golds in every single one of her palettes in these special shades. Just look, if you look at the entire lineup, every single one of them, if it's a 4, like if it's got these special shades, there's going to be a yellow toned gold in there. This has that too, but because it has a very sort of light undertone, I feel it still works on me. And then you get a really nice pop of blue, and then you just get these two duochromy, multi-chromy kind of shades that really amp up this palette. So this is a lovely, lovely eyeshadow palette that, yes, it's a very pricey purchase. Is it as perfect as a Natasha, Nona, Glam? I think that's a little bit more perfect than this one. But again, because it has those interesting shades, and really you only get 3, maybe 4 actual neutrals in here, and everything else has a color or something else to it, that makes this a little bit more interesting. So you can make this very neutral and wearable and everyday, but you don't have to. So depending on how much money you want to spend, or how much money you can spend on makeup, I hope I have been able to give you a good overview of my top 10 favorite eyeshadow palettes that are cool tone, neutral leaning palettes that I would recommend you buy. Of course, everybody has their own taste, so I hope I was also able to take into account some of your personal tastes and what you might be looking for into a palette. And then that's it for me for today. So thank you very much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more by me. I'm coming to you with a slightly different video on Tuesday, but then it's back to eyeshadow palettes as per usual for the rest of the month. So I hope you would like to stay tuned for that, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.